The Deng Xiaoping right now in Beijing, that he will take his troops and take the Chinese away from Tibet.
I have spent time with the Dalai Lama. I believe him to be an honest man. And I believe if he had a conversation with President Zhang, they would like each other very much.
An old political issue is back in the news. It was quite the rage in the 20th century, but then it lost traction. I'm talking about Tibet. In the last few years, most countries appeared to have moved on from it. But now they are back. Today, a US delegation arrived in the Indian city of Dharamshala. That's where the Dalai Lama lives, in Dharamshala. Now, this delegation is bipartisan, meaning it has both Democrats and Republicans. Among them is Nancy Pelosi. She's a former Speaker of the US House of Representatives. She's also a top Democrat. First, this delegation met with officials of the Tibetan government in exile. Then they visited the Tibetan parliament, and tomorrow is the main event, a meeting with the Dalai Lama. But why now? Listen to what the delegation had to say.
Our purpose of our visit is to reinforce the resolution that we signed and to visit His Holiness the Dalai Lama.
I am very excited to see His Holiness, to get some of his wisdom, to show that the United States of America is with him and that with our joint resolution are together.
It's all about solidarity. Earlier this year, the US Congress passed a new law. It's called the Resolve Tibet Act. And what does it do? This law puts pressure on China to hold talks with Tibetan officials to basically sort out this issue, an American law to force China. Now, just to be clear, that doesn't mean Tibetan independence. The Dalai Lama has given up on that demand. He now seeks a middle path. No independence, but more autonomy. That's what he wants. But will China agree? Well, the talks have been stalled since 2010. Xi Jinping came to power after that, after 2010, and his position has been even more radical. So do not expect any breakthroughs. As for this visit, China obviously is not happy about it. They have criticized any US contact with Tibetan officials.
As we all know, the 14th Dalai Lama is not a pure religious figure, but a political exile who engages in anti-China separatist activities under the guise of religion. We urge the US to fully recognize the anti-China and separatist nature of the Dalai Lama group, abide by the commitment on Tibet-related issues, refrain from any form of contact with it, and stop sending wrong information to the outside world.
What's the larger picture here? What do we make of the US policy on Tibet? Well, this visit is not unprecedented. Nancy Pelosi herself has met the Dalai Lama before. She visited Dharamshala in the year 2008. Back then, she was also the House Speaker. But since then, Tibet has taken a back seat in Washington. Yes, US presidents have met the Dalai Lama, but the activism was missing. Instead, Washington focused on China's atrocities elsewhere, like Hong Kong and Xinjiang. So why is the focus back on Tibet? Well, one reason could be the Dalai Lama himself. He's 88 years old. He's clearly the most visible symbol of the Tibetan movement, and it's not clear who will succeed him. Normally, the Dalai Lama is said to reincarnate. That's what the Tibetans believe, that he will reincarnate. But the current Dalai Lama does not want to discuss it. He says he's not considering reincarnation yet. Meanwhile, the Chinese have hatched their own plans. They want to appoint their own Dalai Lama, basically usurp the Tibetan legacy. So this movement is facing an existential challenge. You cannot keep delaying the question of leadership. Maybe that explains the renewed focus. And it's not just the US. Other democracies are also speaking up, like India and the European Union. We told you about this last week. India is planning to rename 30 places in Tibet, like rivers, cities, and bridges. The plan is to give historical Indian names to these places in Tibet. Same with the European Union. Last week, an EU delegation visited Tibet. It was a rare move by the European Union. They flagged human rights concerns in the region. They also had a message for Beijing. Don't meddle in Tibet's religious affairs, especially in selecting the next Dalai Lama. Another example is Australia. They sent a parliamentary delegation to Dharamshala in March. Again, quite a rare move, but all of this could be a trailer because the main event has not happened yet, a meeting between the Dalai Lama and the US president. It hasn't happened in a long time. Bill Clinton had met the Dalai Lama, George Bush met him too, so did Barack Obama, but Donald Trump did not. In fact, the Dalai Lama was quite critical of Trump. Biden too hasn't met the Dalai Lama as president, but he could have a chance this month. The Dalai Lama is traveling to the US for a surgery. His aides have not announced a meeting yet, but it's certainly possible. And all of this makes one thing quite clear. Tibet is back on the global agenda. Yes, it's a humanitarian and moral cause, but it's also a tool to put pressure on China. Unlike Xinjiang or Hong Kong, Tibet has recall value. It also has a rallying figure in the form of the Dalai Lama. Let's hope India also takes a cue from this. Prime Minister Modi has not met the Dalai Lama after taking office. The last such meeting was in 2010. That's when the Dalai Lama met the then Indian Prime Minister, Dr. Manmohan Singh. So should Prime Minister Modi also take the plunge? If the policy is tit for tat, we do not see why not.
Firstpost reports from the world's second largest continent. Hello, I'm Alison Lagrange. A very warm welcome from Durban, South Africa. We get you the news and the newsmakers from Africa. From elections to climate change to innovations and opportunities. As the world's attention shifts, we report from Africa, the heart of the global South. Join me every weekday live on Firstpost.